Kenmore City Council is now in session. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Culver,
Present.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Sassen,
Present.
Councilmember Shrubnik, here, Councilmember Lutsis,
Here.
Mayor Herbig,
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane. Deputy Mayor O'Kane is not present at the moment. Is she excused?
Unless there's any objections, Deputy Mayor O'Kane will be excused. Being none, she's excused.
Excused.
Next on the agenda is executive session, confidential session of the council pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I. The city council will now enter into an executive session to discuss pending litigation. The executive session is slated to last approximately 15 minutes. We're going to remain at ease until 7. We're waiting on a guest for a proclamation.
Hi, Don. While we're waiting, can you say hello to make sure we've got you here on our side?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the Kenmore City Council is back in order. There is no action to be taken related to executive session, and let's have the record reflect that Deputy Mayor O'Kane is now in attendance. Next up, we have the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Soxhawtla, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have treasured and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First Peoples, acknowledge their vibrant cultures, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. Now, if you would all please stand and join me in the flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America, God indivisible, with
Next up, we have a proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day. Whereas Indigenous peoples have lived on these lands for thousands of years with rich cultural traditions, knowledge, and deep relationships with the land. And whereas Indigenous peoples have made and continue to make significant contributions to our society in areas such as art, science, technology, governance, education, and environmental stewardship. And whereas Indigenous peoples have historically faced discrimination, oppression, and the erasure of their cultures, and there's an ongoing need for truth, reconciliation, and the recognition of Indigenous rights. And whereas the celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day honors the sovereignty, resilience, and strength of Indigenous peoples past, present, and future, while fostering understanding and respect for the diverse cultural heritage that enriches our community. And whereas the City Council recognizes through our land acknowledgement that the City of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Soxhawtl, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. And whereas we continue to stand alongside Indigenous peoples in our community and beyond by working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land and express our commitment to raising awareness and promoting positive change. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 14th, 2024 to be Indigenous Peoples Day throughout the City of Kenmore. And where did our city manager go? Oh, there you are. That's your city manager?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. And Ty Juvenile, if you could come up and let us shower a little bit of thanks and gratitude for all that you've done for our community. Many of you may know Ty Juvenile is our Tulalip artist who has produced some amazing works of art at Tlahuatis Park, also the Story Pole at the town square. And he's really added culture and life and vibrancy to our city, and we're just grateful to have him. And we'd like to present you with a gift. And so I need some help with this. Thank you, Debbie and Stephanie. So maybe we can go over here, sorry. So a Kenmore resident made this quilt for you, and it's a gift to you from the Kenmore community. So I've asked my coworkers to spread it out a little bit so we can point out a couple things that I think you might like. There you go. There you go. All right. So again, handmade quilt by a caring Kenmore resident who's been admiring your work. But Ty, do you notice anything in particular? Bottom right. Yeah. So Ty, your Lushootseed name is Zuwaksabwakwak, and it means lightning frog. And so the title of this quilt is Lightning Frog. And can you guys let the council see it as well? Just kind of, sorry. So there's the lightning frog. And this is kind of a natural landscape with mountain and trees and the water. And this represents a little village. And so this is the least we can do. It's a thank you for all you've done for our community and recognize what you've done. So this is your lightning frog quilt. So thank you so much, Ty. Yeah, and yeah. We've asked Suzanne Greathouse, the president of the Kenmore Heritage Society, come and say a few words as well, because Suzanne worked really closely with Ty and getting the artwork produced and getting it funded. So Suzanne, if you could say a few words.
So mostly I just want to thank Ty. He's been at our local elementary schools, telling stories and educating about culture. He's been a great help to me in understanding what we need to do to be respectful of the Indigenous culture and displaying their artwork. And he continues to be an inspiration for me. And so I greatly appreciate everything you've done.
Yeah, and one more thing I forgot to mention, this is just a note from the quilter. It says, "We believe in the power of story, and we're grateful that you've been willing to share your story and the story of your people through your art with Kenmore residents. In sharing our stories, we give a sacred piece of our hearts, and when we receive them, our hearts can grow bigger. This quilt tells a small portion of your story, of the lightning frog whose knowledge and power brings abundance to green places. It is our wish that the stories of our peoples continue to be shared in a way that causes our hearts to grow big enough to fill the earth." So, yeah.
I can't thank you guys enough. I don't get a lot of gifts, I usually do the giving. This is something that I'm really happy with. I love thoughtful gifts, and this is a thoughtful gift. Even having this at the bottom of the corner, it really is something that I'm going to cherish. I can already see my family using this blanket. And whenever we receive blankets, we're told to use them. Don't fold them up and put them in the closet. Use them. And this is definitely going to be something that we use. Like it touches me. And the words that Rob shared about, community, that's something that you guys have here in Kenmore. And I'm working with KEXP right now. And my bio, I started with the quote that I kind of live by: rich in community or rich in money. You have to choose which one you want. And my grandma always told me, with money, you can buy things, but with community, there's certain things you can't buy. And you'll get to an age where you can't buy the things you need. You can't buy the help that you need to take care of yourself, because we're going to get to an age where I need young people to help me. I need people to take care of me, because that's how it works. We're born as a baby and we die as a baby. And if we don't have community, we won't be taken care of. And in Kenmore, you guys have a wonderful community. And I love visiting here every time I come here. And you guys have always been receptive to everything I say, and not as criticism, but as a learning opportunity. And that's where I feel a lot of people get hurt, is it's not criticism, it's learning. These are all learning opportunities, and you guys take them great. You're there to hear me out, not just me, Tulalip people like Ray Freiberg, he's been here to work with y'all, and our Lashutsi program's been here to work with you guys. So I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you.
We'd like to get a photo with the council and you, if we could. All right, next on the agenda is a presentation, Stride Bus Rapid Transit Program, presented by Ariel Taylor, Sound Transit Director, Government and Communications, East Corridor, Sarah Langton, and Rick Kapka, Deputy Program Executive for the Bus Rapid Transit Program.
I can figure out how to use the microphone. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Ariel Taylor. As Mayor Herbig mentioned, I am the Director of Government and Community Relations for the East Corridor at Sound Transit, which includes the 522 or State Route 522 projects. With me, I have Sarah Langton and Rick Kapka, and they are welcome to introduce themselves if they'd like to.
I'm Sarah Langton. I am a public affairs consultant working with tonight in this capacity with Sound Transit on their East Side government affairs work as well as on the 522 project.
Good evening, Rick Kapka. I work for Sound Transit as the Deputy Program Executive on the BRT program. So nice to see you all this evening.
All right, so a little bit about what we'll cover today. I'll go ahead and kick us off and then my colleagues will add on to the presentation. But we're going to talk a little bit about Sound Transit and what we're doing, the system expansion programs that we have, what that means for the city of Kenmore and how you are included in that expansion plan. That, spoiler alert, that plan is called the BRT program or Bus Rapid Transit program. We're going to use that acronym a lot tonight, so apologies if I fall into it. We'll talk about the updates to that program itself and where we're at in implementing the Bus Rapid Transit program. And of course, we'll talk about the project timeline and continued engagement for the project. So a little bit about system expansion. What you see here on the slide is the Sound Transit system when it is fully built out. I want to point out that every single line and color that you see here on this slide is fully funded via ballot measures. We've had 3 of them, one in 1996, one in 2008, and again in 2016. You may have noticed that the Linwood Link project or the extension of the 1 line opened, gosh, August 30th. It seems like it was more recent than that, but very exciting day for here, communities north of Lake Washington being able to access that new light rail system. But what you see here highlighted in the red box is S3. And this gold colored line is part of the Bus Rapid Transit lines that we are building on State Route 522, as well as I-405. We're going to get into a little bit more about what Bus Rapid Transit is and what it means and how it operates. But the goal of this S3 project is to make sure that the communities along State Route 522 have fast, frequent, reliable connections to that light rail system that just opened in Shoreline in Montlake Terrace. So those are the types of investments we are looking at implementing.
So before we go into the project specifics about the updates on the 522 S3 BRT project, I wanted to make sure, because I think most of you are new, I wanted to make sure you knew the story of how this project came to be, because this project came out of the city of Kenmore. So I just want to take a moment and tell you this story. So when the package came out, the original ST3 is what it was called, package came out in 2015, there was nothing in it for your city or any of the North End cities. And so because of the leadership of your council at the time and your mayor, a grassroots coalition came together. They called themselves the 522 Transit Now Coalition. I have one of their t-shirts still to this day. We are very positive about that. They came together to advocate for what is now the Bus Rapid Transit project to be put onto the ST3 ballot for 2016. And Janet Quinn, who I think most of you know, who now works for the city, stepped forward to lead that group. The cities of Kenmore, Bothell, Lake Forest Park, and Shoreline all came together to advocate for the project. The business, civic, educational, healthcare, all of those stakeholders came together to help advocate for the project, as did the Bothell Kenmore Chamber and the Shoreline Chambers. They wrote letters. They made sure that their input was heard in the surveys, because Sound Transit did a bunch of surveys before they finalized the package. And they attended all the Sound Transit board meetings in their yellow t-shirts. As a result, the coalition was successful in getting the 522 project added to the ST3 list of projects. The task then became to make sure we kept it on the list for final adoption by the ST Sound Transit Board. So to do that, the coalition helped convene a joint meeting of all of your councils, Bothell, Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, and Shoreline. There's a picture on the screen that shows it. We held it right here. Looks kind of like United Nations. We invited the Sound Transit key staff, the East King board members, and Claudia Balducci and Fred Butler, who was Issaquah mayor at the time, both came. And we had, the group had hired Fair and Peers to do some data collection and some traffic modeling. So they were there, and together the group made the pitch to the Sound Transit staff and board about why this project mattered and why it needed to stay on the list. At the conclusion of the meeting, just a side note, I remember Claudia Balducci, who's now a King County Council member, saying to us, "I've never seen anything like that. That was the coolest meeting ever." So very fun. So ongoing, the coalition members kept attending the Sound Transit Board meetings. You can see the bottom picture is them in their shirts at a Sound Transit Board meeting so that they could be visible, they could be positive, they could be the supportive, vote or voice of transit and bus rapid transit. And as a result, the SG3 project, it ended up getting on there and staying on there and was part of the package that went to the voters in 2016. One side note I wanted to mention is that during and as a result of COVID, all the things that happened, Sound Transit had to go through a process called realignment because of financial issues, supply chain issues, workforce issues, all the things that everybody was facing. And what ended up happening is the 522 project subsequently got put on a tier 2 project list. Well, originally it was tier 2. Tier 2. And so the 522 coalition got back together, put their t-shirts back on, went back to the Sound Transit Board meeting to advocate strongly that it be put back into tier 1 because we were already underway. The project was underway in design, environmental work, and we didn't want to stop. And it would have been lots of big delays if we had been in tier 2. So they were successful in keeping the project, getting it put back into tier 1. So I just wanted to share that story because it was kudos to Kenmore, who really stepped forward to begin this process. And I can't wait for you to hear how well it's going and where we're at. So thanks.
Before we leave this slide quickly, the last bullet point here, it says the 522 BRT is now referred to as the S3 line. Or
Yes.
Stride 3. That'll make more sense here in 1 second.
Yeah.
So what is bus rapid transit? We showed you the system expansion map that had all of the colorful spaghetti on it at the beginning of this presentation. But what you see here are the 3 BRT or bus rapid transit lines. The name of our bus rapid transit system will be Stride, ST Ride, if you're one of those people who looks for little Easter eggs in branding. So this will run on State Route 522, of course, and then we will have 2 lines in or on the I-405 corridor called the S1 and S2 lines. The S3 and S2 lines actually have a connection point out at UW Bothell in that vicinity so that people can transfer to the 405 line to get to downtown Bellevue and other stops along the line if they so wish. I'll write a little bit more about what bus rapid transit is. So this BRT system is actually an enhanced bus system or bus service than what you have today on the 522 corridor. So these are buses that arrive every 10 minutes. These are very high designed stations where they are more than just a bus stop. They will have lighting, they will have artwork, they will be a welcoming environment. That is Sound Transit's goal for these stations. So they will have near level boarding for ADA accessibility for buses. The buses don't have to kneel or anything like that. For wheelchairs, they will have off-board fare collection, unless you're paying cash. We do realize that there is an equity component here for those folks who need to pay cash. And they will also include rider information. As part of the bus rapid transit program, we do also need to build bus facilities like bus lanes, queue jumps, transit priority signals. Those help the buses move faster and actually keep our travel times as low as possible. So that way, if there's a lot of traffic one day, the bus can make sure that it's keeping a consistent schedule. A little bit about Stride Fleet and stations. Here is a rendering of what we anticipate our Stride stations will look like. They are colorful, so you can see here that they are blue and yellow. You'll also notice here 2 images of buses. We are proud to say that we are implementing our first ever all-electric bus fleet for the Stride BRT system. We will be running double-decker buses, which are more appropriate for freeway speeds on I-405, and we will be running the articulated battery electric buses on the 522 corridor. Of course, our facility is up here. You can see we will have public art incorporated at each of these stations. For this picture you see here, that means stained glass artwork. So we are working with local artists in the community to make sure that whatever artwork is placed at this station will reflect the community in which the station is present. There will also be bicycle accommodations on these fleet vehicles, as well as state-of-the-art, we can go into that if you want to, passenger information, basically when is my bus arriving, all of that information will be at each station.
All right, thank you, Ariel. So how will these improvements along the 405 and 522 corridors help commuters? So once Stride is up and running, we expect to see significant travel time reductions along each of those service lines. So specifically looking at the S3 service line at the bottom of this slide, runs through Kenmore. The intersection upgrades that Ariel referred to along Northeast 145th Street, the business access and transit lanes or the bus-only lanes that we are adding along 522, and then transit signal priority technology upgrades that we're making at each of the intersections. All of those things are going to add up to about a 20-minute savings for this 9-mile corridor for riders. That is significant. So I want to focus a minute on schedule for our project. So specifically looking at the S3 service line along 522, we are at 100% design for our project for this entire 9-mile corridor. We are continuing with right-of-way acquisition, which has been in process. We are also getting into the permitting phase of the project. We're working with local jurisdictions like yourselves at Kenmore to get construction permitting lined up. Both of those activities, acquisition and permitting, will continue into 2025. We expect to begin construction contract procurement late this year, specifically in this stretch of the corridor through Kenmore and Bothell. We will have a single construction contract. We're looking to advertise that before the end of this year. Assuming we have a successful procurement with this contract, by the middle of next year, we expect to be starting construction. And I expect it will be here in the city of Kenmore where we begin. Construction, as you can see on this schedule, is shown to run through early 2028, at which time the program will get into testing and startup with our buses to make sure the stations and the buses are operating correctly. And then we'll get into revenue service operations later in 2028. So as we move towards construction next year, I do want to mention our community engagement team will be organizing both online and in-person events to update folks as we work towards construction. We will be publishing those events on our project website. Anyone with questions or comments is welcome to reach out to us. You can see our email address on this slide. And before closing, I do want to express a specific appreciation to one of the team members here at the City of Kenmore, John Vicente. John has been working on our project for the past several years. He's been our kind of engineering liaison, helping us to move this project forward. He's been phenomenal. He's been a tremendous collaborator, not only with Sound Transit staff, but also with the other jurisdictions along the corridor, including WashDOT. Without John, we would not be sitting here tonight on the cusp of going out for construction contract procurement. So I did just want to thank John specifically this evening. That, I'll hand it back over to you, Ariel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I do want to just highlight one thing that Rick mentioned here, which is we are going to start construction in earnest on this project next year. And we will want to host a groundbreaking for that major milestone. That will likely, because of the construction timelines and what we anticipate, that will likely happen here in Kenmore. So more to come on when we're ready to do that. And that actually concludes our presentation.
Fantastic. Do we have any questions, comments? Councilor Lucis?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I think this is really exciting. I think transit accessibility and access is really critical, especially when considering a lot of the needs, the growth in our community, looking at addressing a lot of the impacts of climate change and everything. So seeing an electric fleet and having this accessibility, this reliability of transit services, I think is absolutely critical. And I'm really excited for that. So thank you.
Your Honor, if I can just add.
Of course.
Yeah, so Sound Transit's been really a great partner to work with. They've done a really good job keeping us in the loop, keeping us posted. They've had two ongoing committees, the city managers committee and then the technical committee that John Vicente has been serving on. And we've had those meetings every couple months or so ever since 2017. And I just really appreciate all the updates and keeping us in the loop, play by play. We've never been surprised. There's been a lot of twists and turns, lots of obstacles and challenges, but you've kept us in the loop all the way, gotten us our input. And when things were looking a little sketchy at times, you let us know and we got mobilized and kept things on track. And so I just really appreciate Sound Transit. I feel like we've been given the dream team of Sound Transit staff assigned to us, and their engineering firms that they've been working with have also been really stellar. So just really grateful to be able to work with Sound Transit.
Sure, I've asked this at previous presentations, but it's been a little while. I currently, take the 522 transfer at Roosevelt and then go downtown. Do we have an idea what the ride time for a ride downtown will look like compared to what we have currently?
That's a great question. We have that data. Do I have it here tonight with me? No. I will
Okay.
absolutely
put you on the
follow
spot.
up, but I can tell you because of the frequency that we are anticipating in the BRT program and the direct connection into the Shoreline station, it will be faster.
Yeah, the connection at Roosevelt is not my favorite transfer,
We
so
know, yes.
fantastic. Well, that's great to hear. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so much for coming out and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for having us.
I have been informed that our previous presentation with Mr. Juvenal is our Where's the Fun for the day. So we're going to skip that one. Public comments. I want to welcome folks to the council's meeting. We want you to please address your comments to the mayor and council. Folks will have 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will call your name when it is your turn. Please state your name, city of residence, and keep within your allotted time to make every person feel welcome and safe here. Please refrain from booing, clapping, heckling, yelling, or other interruptions. The meeting is recorded for transparency. Thank you for being here and for sharing your input respectfully. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 1 guest on site wishing to speak and 0 guests pre-registered online. Elizabeth Mooney.
Hello, council. I'm Elizabeth Mooney. I've lived in Kenmore since '95. And I'm really into the environment, and I'm also into what Ty was talking about, the community. So COVID happened, and I'm just gonna say everybody's forgiven because of COVID. And surveys don't work. And I've been talking to a few of you about 61st Avenue Northeast and the red maples and the tree ordinances and stuff like that. So One, I don't think it's anybody's fault, but I do think it'd be really, really, really nice to honor our community members by having a 61st Avenue Northeast meeting, if we could do it. Partly because I'm just learning that what started is just all those bumps that are not good for people to walk on, for baby carriages, et cetera. And I love the trees, but the bumps are bad, that it went from like 100,000 to like 4 million. And I didn't know that. And I was sitting there saying, save the trees, save the trees. Now I'm learning more about master builders. I don't really like them, just by the way, because of Sunbrook up in Briar. I think that it's a good time 3 years after the surveys went out to maybe have a community meeting and honor one of our amazing community members, Jim Howard, who has been, he doesn't even come in anymore. But I want to just advocate for having a meeting. Now, whether you do or not, I don't know. But here's the second thing, the environment. Lake Point has been coming up. Oh my goodness, if you start talking about buying Lake Point, I don't know what's going to happen in this community. That is a toxic dump. And our state ecology agency has not made the owner of that test, even though there was supposed to be wells that you could test, but they're all covered up with all the gravel, and Skanska's there. So anyway, all I'm saying is, I understand that the city is pursuing Lake Point. That's great. I'm super excited about the possibilities of what that might turn into. But I think that we should take advantage of our wonderful Tanner Bushnell, I think is his name. He's the new manager of Department of Ecology, and their expertise to follow through with assessments related to the existing consent decree in evaluating the environmental risks. I look forward to the potential that Lake Point offers with thoughtful development that's environmentally responsible. I'm happy to help pull people together and listen to what all of you are talking about. Maybe bring in Gary Sargent. Wouldn't that be fun to see what he has to say about his property? I think we should make coffee, bring him in, and talk about the history of all the different developers that did not buy that property, and then talk about public health and safety, and then go forward after we ask Department of Ecology to do their job. Maybe pull in WashDOT, because they put a bunch of junk down there. But good luck and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney. Mayor Herbeck, that concludes our speakers list.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Mooney. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion,
Second.
a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda stands approved as published. Next up, business agenda. Presentation of the preliminary 2025-2026 biennial budget and reading of the city manager's budget message.
Mayor Herbeck, is there a
Yes.
public hearing before that item?
Did I really? Oh, geez. Here it was. You're correct. Thank you. Sarah, next on the agenda, proposed public hearing on proposed ordinance 24-0614, 2025-2030 capital improvement program for parks, transportation, surface water management, and city facilities, presented by Finance and Administration Director Melinda Merrill, Community Development Director Debbie Bent, Engineering Director John Vicente, Environmental Services Director Richard Sawyer, and Public Works Operations Director Jennifer Gordon. Apologies.
Evening, Council. Thank you for having me once again. I am, for the sake of a public hearing, going through the same presentation I went through last time. So sorry for the repetition, but it gives you a chance to hear this information because it's always good to hear things more than once, and to offer the opportunity to ask more questions if you've had a chance to dig a little deeper into this information. Also, you can see the seats are empty next to me, but my peers are online should you have questions that I cannot answer. So they are available if you guys have questions. So we are going over the CIP, or Capital Improvement Program, for the period of 2025 through 2030. As I mentioned last time, there are 44 total projects valued at over $100,000. Parks has 6 projects, transportation 15 projects, surface water management 21, and the 1 project for city facilities, which is the Public Works Operations Center. So for the Parks Capital Improvement Program, again, there are 6 projects. Mostly they're mitigation type, continuing to care for the parks. There is a sign replacement and then a playground feasibility study is new for the feasibility study. And here are the dollars. The top section shows the costs. The bottom shows the funding. As you can see, they are balanced out through that time period. So for transportation, did I skip one? Nope, I guess not. For transportation, these are all of those projects. Some are new projects, some are have been on the list and are works in progress. Go to the next sheet, which shows the projects over the course of 2025 to 2030, and then the various funding sources. I think I mentioned this before, but we do have some funding that we are either have applied or we're going to apply or awaiting being awarded the dollars. And that will obviously impact whether or not we can move forward with some of the work. Next up are all of the many surface water capital improvement programs, and this is after it was passed last year, the Rapid Plus project plan. So obviously a lot has been added here to get done in the next 6 years. And so these are the lists of all of those projects. Again, project costs are at the top and the funding is at the bottom. We are planning on using bond proceeds to help pay for these projects. And we are also using a little bit of carryover dollars to help pay for this. And also there would be grants applied for to make this work happen. And the one project for the Public Works Center, the design and construction. And here are the costs and the funding, which, as you know, is coming from SWIM and REAP funds. And I think the last one is just the very large slide. These are all the expenditures that you see, and then all the revenues. And the pie chart of where all the sources of revenues are coming from. A large amount comes from state grants, a large amount from SWIM and REAP, and then other grants and federal grants. Some coming from CAPE, which is great. Nice to see we were able to capitalize on some of those dollars, and some impact fees. Then I think my last slide, okay, this is the last slide. So tonight, public hearing, and then potential adoption in a week. And what questions do you have?
Questions before we open up the public hearing? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. I'm going to declare the public hearing open on proposed ordinance 240614. Is there anybody signed up for the public hearing?
Mayor Herbig, we have no one on site wishing to speak and no pre-registered guests.
Is there anybody in person wishing to be heard? Anybody wishing to be heard? One last call. Is there anybody wishing to be heard? Seeing none, I'm declaring the public hearing closed. Now we'll move on to the business agenda. Presentation of the preliminary 2025-2026 biennial budget and reading of the city manager's budget message presented by Finance Administration Director Melinda Merrill, City Manager Rob Carlindsey, and Deputy City Manager Stephanie Lukash. What I was looking for.
All right, Your Honor and City Council. This is a big deal. Our finance director is passing out the proposed 2025-2026 biennial budget. So a lot of work and effort has gone into the production of this budget. It's got a lot of moving parts, and I'm grateful to Melinda Morel and her team for producing this budget. And Your Honor, if it's okay with you, with Stephanie Lukash, our Deputy City Manager's help, we would like to read the City Manager's budget letter that's there in the budget. And you can either watch it on your screen because it'll be on the screen, or you can follow along in your budget binders. What page is the City Manager's budget letter on? Do you have that in the binder? Page 4, okay. So it's near the beginning. Floor is yours. Okay. All right. Dear City Council members, it is a thrill and an honor to submit to you another biennial budget. Kenmore is such a special city with its incredible residents and businesses, its stunning natural environment, its ideal location in the region, and our team of passionate and caring city employees. And yet, Kenmore's upside potential is so great, with much good still to do for the climate and natural environment, parks, recreation, housing, human services, economic development, transportation choices, public safety, and much more.
Our service vision for the city is to propel Kenmore upward and create a thriving community where all people love where they live. We see our people thriving in many places and ways, from the dozens of wildlife habitat restoration volunteer work parties every year, to the many Love Note projects produced by our co-creators, to the ways our local businesses come together to build communities, such as the Oktoberfest celebration this fall. What a city can do for its residents and businesses is wonderful and marvelous. Just think of the things we're privileged to do for our community, or what I call what we are in the business of. We are in the business of creating a sense of community and a sense of place. We are in the business of saving lives and preventing human suffering. We are in the business of beautifying our city. We are in the business of planning for a better future. We are in the business of protecting the natural environment. We are in the business of facilitating democracy. We are in the business of asking, where's the fun, and so much more. Who wouldn't want to work for an organization that does just one of those things? And yet we get to do them all. How cool is that? The last biennium was remarkable in propelling Kenmore upward for a number of reasons, not the least of which was the final completion of the last 3 of 5 walkways and waterways projects. The Kenmore City Council cut the ribbons on the Juanita Drive and 68th Avenue walking, biking, and beautification projects, as well as the new environmental restoration and recreational features at Trois Hadis Park. Kenmore is a different and better city thanks to walkways and waterways projects, and we have our residents to thank for giving us and trusting us with the resources to deliver these key projects. The City Council also took decisive steps toward its top priorities, including funding a new climate action program manager, a housing and human services manager, and key initiatives performed by those positions. For a city our size, these are bold and proactive moves, and they show how our City Council, in partnership with the community, is willing to take on some of the most pressing and urgent issues of our time and put their values and aspirations into action. Our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion is also worth noting. In this last biennium, the City Council adopted a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, or DEIA, strategic plan and 5-year roadmap. We began implementing this plan and reported on its progress earlier this year. We are very grateful to our coworkers who worked hard to produce this plan. We are also thankful for the many hours that our volunteers on the DEIA Advisory Committee gave to this effort and for the continued counsel and service they provide. And let me point out that our DEIA strategic plan is not done. We still have a lot to do. In 2024, the City Council adopted a preamble to its priorities document. This preamble reads as follows. The city's top priority will always be fulfilling its core mission, which includes city governance, ensuring public safety, maintaining the city's infrastructure, complying with state and federal mandates, and safeguarding the city's finances. In addition, achieving the city's 20-year vision as described in the comprehensive plan is of high importance. With this context, the City Council can emphasize certain initiatives or address specific problems through its priority setting process each year.
This preamble keeps our core city responsibilities and the comprehensive plan's 20-year vision front and center, while at the same time allowing for certain issues to receive special emphasis. There is no shortage of good things for a city to do. In fact, we could do so much more in many areas, including infrastructure, parks, recreation, police services, traffic safety, beautification, community engagement, the climate and environment, economic and community development, and supplementing state and county services such as human services and subsidized affordable housing. But there is a limit on our financial resources, and we have to allocate those limited resources wisely, prudently, and in keeping with the preamble of the City Council's priorities.
That said, over the years, we have expanded or created many new city services. Examples include new sidewalks, bicycle lanes, and street landscaping, and the added maintenance and operating costs that go with this new infrastructure. The Target Zero initiative, including an increase in the level of service and traffic safety programs and engineering. Kenmore Automated Photo Enforcement Program. New parks and improved parks, and the added operations and maintenance costs. Other new infrastructure and programs such as the hangar, town square, and boathouse. Added recreation programs provided by nonprofits at city parks and the increased staff time needed to coordinate those programs. New city-imposed regulations such as tenant protections and tree regulations that require more staff time to administer and more legal services to defend. New federal and state-imposed regulations such as new building and energy codes that create substantial additional work, including longer and more plan review and added inspections. Another example is Senate Bill 5290, which reduces the amount of time allowed for the review and processing of local permits, requiring more staff resources to meet those timelines. The Climate Action Plan, Human Services, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Strategic Plan and Programming, affordable housing, including increased contributions to the Arts Trust Fund and being directly involved in developing affordable housing on city-owned properties. Regional Crisis Response Alternative Response Program with police. Partnership with North King County cities that led to the opening of Connections Health Kirkland, a 24/7 crisis care center to meet our community's behavioral health needs. Economic development efforts, including expanded business registration program, new business directory, new Hank Heron mascot program, and new business award as part of the McMaster Award celebration. Aquatic weeds management. Ambitious new Rapid Progress Plus fish blocking culverts replacement initiative. Added surface water programs and regulations to comply with ever-increasing state and federal requirements. The above are examples of how we have increased services and infrastructure to help propel Kenmore upward. By increasing revenues and staff, as well as tactically leveraging our existing resources, we have tried to make room in the budget for all of these things.
But there is a limit to what new programs we can make room for under our existing organizational structure. In fact, we are already straining under the weight of all the new programs and services that have been added over the last 10 to 15 years. We are currently organized with a lean structure that harkens back to and continues from our startup days as a new city back in the late 90s and early 2000s. For example, we have department heads and staff bearing multiple functions that would normally be distributed among a larger base of department heads and managers in a larger, more mature city organization. As a residential contract city with a comparatively small tax base, this leaner structure worked well for us for the first 10 or 15 years of the city's existence. But this lean structure has been increasingly strained as we have, number one, moved from contracting to in-house, and number two, added new programs, infrastructure, and services. As a result, we are due for a broadening of the base of our organizational chart. Quality of work in many parts of our organization is already suffering under current workload demands. The list of tasks and programs is too big to do everything well. Additional workload from new programs or initiatives would result in thinning the soup even more. Quality and morale would suffer as the same resources would be distributed over more competing priorities. If there is a desire to add even more programs, services, and infrastructure, we will need to expand and change the leadership structure, i.e. the base, as well as the staffing structure of our organizational chart to be more like the organizational charts of more traditional, mature cities with larger tax bases and greater ability to provide more services. Despite the strain that we are already under, I'm not proposing any such structural changes to our organizational chart in this proposed budget, given our financial limits. But broadening and right-sizing our organizational structure is a conversation we will need to have soon if the vision is to continue to add more parks, recreation, human services, city-imposed regulations, infrastructure, and other services and programs. What would such an organization look like? One only needs to look to our older neighboring cities such as Kirkland and Bothell to answer this question. These cities have more department head positions to carry the load of managing city services. Examples of such director positions that Kenmore does not have include Public Works Director, Parks and Recreation Director, Human Resources Director, and Information Technology Director. In addition, these director positions have administrative support positions to go with them, and in many cases, assistant director or mid-level manager positions. In lieu of these directors and supporting positions in Kenmore, functions are distributed and absorbed among a smaller number of our management team members. Examples include the following. Our Finance and Administration Director handles not only finance, but also information technology, risk management, and human resources. Our Public Works Operations Director manages parks and recreation in addition to streets, parks, fleet, and building facilities operations, with no assistant director or manager to help manage the work. In the absence of a Public Works Director, the city's 3 Public Works divisions report directly to the city manager. As shown in the examples above, we ask a lot of our team, and they work very hard and effectively to deliver despite the multiple hats we ask them to wear. But I believe that we have reached maximum capacity, and in some cases beyond maximum capacity, within a good portion of our organization, including at the leadership level. Adding new programs and initiatives will require not only more staff and resources, which we have at times provided, but also a change in structure, which will include the addition of new departments similar to what we see in our more mature neighboring cities. However, given our financial constraints, we cannot simply expand our organizational chart. Cities like Bothell and Kirkland have stronger tax bases than Kenmore due to their business parks and larger retail areas, including big box stores and dealerships. Kenmore is a primarily residential city, also known as a bedroom community, and it does not have the same opportunities or tolerance for large business parks and big box retail. Lake Point is one potential exception of an opportunity that we'll discuss later in this letter. Given the limits on Kenmore's tax base, increasing revenues is a path forward to afford a broader organizational structure that can support existing, let alone more services. Options include voter-approved levy lid lifts and the formation of a voter-approved metropolitan park district. Again, I am not proposing this broader organizational structure in this current biennium, but it will be a conversation to have in the next biennium.
This proposed 2-year budget maintains existing services and utilizes one-time special projects funding indirectly made possible by the American Rescue Plan Act to add new one-time or pilot initiatives for climate, human services, and economic development. This budget also proposes a capital transfer to the Lake Point Fund in 2025, and we'll see that later in this letter. We are also implementing the 2024 Financial Sustainability Plan Task Force recommendations in this budget. At the beginning of this year, we brought together a task force of Kenmore residents to help us tackle our long-term budget challenges. This amazing group of people rolled up their sleeves, learned about the inner workings of our finances, meaningfully and thoroughly sought input from the public, and produced an incredible plan. We cannot thank them enough for their work. Not including the one-time special projects expenses and the transfer to the Lake Point Fund, Our operating revenues and expenditures to the general fund and street fund are as follows, and you can see the table there. While the above summary of our two main operating funds shows a net combined biennium deficit of $365,740, this deficit is less than what was predicted during the financial sustainability plan process. Using a multi-biennium strategy, the FSP task force was willing to tolerate a temporary deficit in the 2025-26 biennium, given the city's strong fund balance reserves. As recommended measures in the FSP get phased in, the deficits would disappear in future years and fund balances would be replenished. The following table shows the FSP's general fund and street fund picture for 2025 and 2026. The improvement in our budget proposal compared to the FSP prediction comes from two main sources. $2 million in one-time special projects funding is bearing the cost of new initiatives in climate, environment, human services, and economic development. These initiatives are briefly discussed later in this letter and proposed in more detail in the Special Projects Cost Center of the budget. The increased revenues in the Kenmore Automated Photo Enforcement, or CAPE fund, are taking on additional operational costs from the general fund and street fund, including a small portion of the police budget to account for police officer time spent on photo enforcement and other traffic safety activities. Now, if we add in the one-time special projects expenses and the Lake Point transfer in 2025, the 2025-2026 budget picture looks as follows. The following table shows the proposed budget's effect on ending fund balances in the general fund and street fund, assuming the $2 million for special projects is fully spent and the $650,000 transfer to Lake Point in 2025 is included. As you can see in the table above, Kenmore's combined ending fund balance for the general and street funds, even with special projects fully spent and the transfer made to the Lake Point Fund, is higher than the City Council's established policy of having operating fund balances of at least 20% of operating expenses. However, even with this relatively high ending fund balance, we need to continue to be financially prudent and follow the recommendations of the FSP task force. If we don't, the fund balances will deplete below the minimum levels in the not too distant future.
Lake Point. Lake Point has the potential to transform Kenmore, especially its downtown and waterfront, more than any effort so far. The Lake Point property is the last of its kind and size on Lake Washington, and it can advance several top City Council priorities, including environmental sustainability through the restoration of the shoreline, economic development, and increasing our housing supply. We are pursuing the following course of action to make the Lake Point vision a reality. Number one, acquire approximately 15 acres of the 40-acre Lake Point property. This includes acquisition of a 150-foot wide swath of most of the Lake Point shoreline, which is over 3,000 lineal feet of shoreline, and about 4 acres for a future Central Park, for lack of a better term for now, near the west end of the Lake Point, as shown in this drawing here. The goal is to restore the shoreline to its natural state, thereby creating an improved riparian zone for salmon and other wildlife. But in addition, the public will be able to access along the shoreline via a trail and several outlet points over the water. The Central Park will be what we call a drop-dead gorgeous park that will raise the bar for the region and that our residents will be proud to have their friends and family come visit. And number two, in cooperation with the property owner, solicit proposals and select a developer or developers to acquire and develop the rest of Lake Point into a walkable urban village with residential units, retail, office, restaurants, a hotel, and more. For the city to acquire the 15 acres, restore the shoreline, and develop the park will require funding from both grants and a voter-approved tax measure. The timing and financing methods of acquisition and development is currently unknown, so this proposed budget does not include full acquisition and development costs of Lake Point. This budget does, however, propose a financial plan to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with the property owner and a due diligence and preliminary design budget. This budget includes, among other resources, a transfer of $650,000 from the general fund in 2025. And you'll also note that we're going to be proposing a $650,000 transfer from the general fund in 2024 as well. And you'll see that in the budget detail. For more details, see the Lake Point Fund section of this budget. Lake Point, if it fully gets underway as a major project, will impact about just every department in the city. Workloads throughout the organization will need to be assessed and adjusted, including possible delays or reductions in other projects and priorities accordingly.
In 2021, in response to the pandemic, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, which distributed $1.9 trillion in relief funds across the country. Kenmore received $6.4 million, half of which was deposited into the city's bank account in 2021, and the other half came in 2022. We quickly put this funding to good work, including direct cash assistance to low-income households, several human services and business assistance programs, and partially reimbursing the city for the Holt property purchase, which is planned for lower-income workforce housing. The remaining ARPA funds were used to pay for police services in 2023, which freed up just over $2 million in general fund dollars to be used for what we're now calling special projects. This one-time amount of $2 million will be available in this 2025-2026 biennium. The proposed spending list is shown in the Special Projects Cost Center in the general fund of this budget. In creating the proposed list, we considered the ARPA outreach conducted in 2021 and 2022, Love Where You Live community engagement results, and city council priorities. One of the special projects proposals is to provide utility tax assistance for low-income households in Kenmore. The details and exact method of this assistance is to be determined, but the underlying premise of the proposal stems from our regressive tax system in Washington state, including utility taxes. The following graph by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy illustrates the regressive tax burden here in Washington state. You can see the table there. By providing some utility tax relief to our lower income households, we can, at least in a small way, help alleviate the impacts of our state's regressive taxes. Other proposed items on the special projects list include efforts to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reach our climate action plan goals. These efforts include financial incentives for our residents and businesses, as well as grant match funds to implement an electric vehicle charging plan and an urban forestry plan. These efforts, combined with all the efforts of the climate action plan, are sorely needed given the urgent problem of global warming. 2023 was the first year that the average global temperature exceeded the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold above pre-industrial average temperatures, as reported by the BBC in February 2024 in this graph. (2023's El Nino contributed to the warmer temperatures, but the fact that we crossed over 1.5 degrees should still be alarming. Scientists say that only 1 year at 1.5 degrees is not enough to say the planet has crossed the threshold, but there is no doubt we are heading there fast. Here's another depiction of our current trajectory toward 1.5 degrees. What is this 1.5 degree Celsius threshold, and why does it matter? The Natural Resources Defense Council provides the following background. Since climate action emerged as a global concern in the 1970s, scientists have been trying to predict the impacts of varying amounts of temperature rise. By 1990, when the United Nations International Panel on Climate Change published its first assessment, the authors defined the increase of global average temperatures by 2 degrees Celsius, compared to that between 1850 and 1900, as an upper limit beyond which the risks of grave damage to ecosystems and of nonlinear responses are expected to increase rapidly. Those nonlinear responses refer to the triggering of irreversible tipping points, such as rapid glacier melt, collapsing coral reefs, and thawing permafrost. Once past a certain threshold, such events build on themselves, exponentially exacerbating the effects of climate change. In short, Hitting a tipping point should be avoided at all costs, as it would bring devastating losses to ecosystems, societies, and human lives. While the IPCC's prediction is grim and not very pleasant to contemplate, we should not ignore it or passively hope it won't happen. And we don't have to wait to cross the 1.5-degree threshold before we can see devastating effects of climate change. Our planet has already been experiencing the effects, as explained in a recent United Nations article. Even as current levels of global warming, we are already seeing devastating climate impacts, including intensifying extreme weather events, alarming reductions in ice sheets, sea ice and glaciers, and several mass coral bleaching events with widespread harms to people, economies, and nature. Even here in the mild oasis of the Pacific Northwest, we are not immune. We are experiencing more extreme hot days, smoke from wildfires, and flooding. Glaciers are shrinking and snowpack is declining. Instead of feeling overwhelmed and hopeless as a result of all this news, we can grab onto some hope. Carbon neutral goals and the actions to realize those goals can and are making a difference. Implementation of collective international agreements, such as the 2015 Paris Agreement, is improving projected global warming models. Scientists are telling us to act now and that everyone can do their part, including here in Kenmore. This proposed biennial budget allocates resources to continuing implementing the city's climate action plan. Proposed use of one-time special projects funding to provide even more financial incentives and resources for implementing our plans should give us an extra boost toward achieving our greenhouse gas reduction targets.
All right, moving on to staffing needs. As we discussed earlier, we continue to see increases in workload coming from both internal and external forces. While financial constraints prevent us from expanding the organizational chart to truly meet demands, as a modest alternative, I am proposing increases in several positions. And for the sake of time, I'm going to just briefly mention these and not read every single word here, but we're proposing to increase the building official position from 3/4 time to 1.0 FTE. There's reasoning in there, especially pertaining to increased regulations from the state. Similar on the increase in the permit coordinator position from 0.625 to 1.0. And I think our development services director, Samantha Loyak, makes a good case here. Also, you'll see a proposed civil engineer position and a right-of-way construction inspector. The main theme with these two positions is that we can actually save a lot of money in consulting services if we bring these services in-house. There is an impact to the general fund, however, in both positions. Limited term senior planner for two main reasons: to help with the backfill needed for time spent on Lake Point, especially Debbie Bent's time, and also some peak workloads that are described here in that paragraph. And then also we're proposing a Lake Point project manager. And then lastly, we're proposing a community and business engagement coordinator. And I really recommend that you take the time to read this. It's a net increase of a half-time employee. We'll be reallocating the executive assistant position, which is vacant, to the community and business engagement coordinator. And then to help fill in for that resource, we're proposing to bring a receptionist position to full-time and have that position help us with executive assistant duties.
Capital program. Our capital program for the next biennium will have a big impact on Kenmore. When it comes to transportation capital, while we've completed several large projects in the last few years, we have smaller projects coming up, but more of them, including Arrowhead Drive sidewalks and 80th Avenue sidewalks, just to name two. Our engineering department has been very successful in applying for sidewalk grants, which translates into a very busy sidewalk capital program for the next few years. Kenmore will be even more safe and walkable as a result. As for parks, there are not many parks capital projects coming up, mainly because we are shifting resources over to Lake Point, which has the potential to contain the most major parks capital project in the city's history. The Public Works Operations Center will be under construction next year, and full completion and move-in is scheduled for 2026. I can't underscore enough the importance of this project for the city's ability to provide quality and efficient maintenance services for generations to come. Last but not least, we are very much looking forward to the Surface Water Capital Program because of its potential to open up fish habitat and improve the water quality of our streams and rivers. We are moving full steam ahead with the Rapid Progress Plus Culvert Replacement Program. Many thousands of feet of streams will be opened up for salmon and other wildlife habitat over the next 10 years.
All right, now we're on the home stretch. Conclusion. The proposed 2025-2026 biennial budget, like budgets in the past, is ambitious and full of meaningful and important work. One of our organization's core values is action. We make stuff happen, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Make no mistake, many of the challenges we are taking on in this budget are not easy. Some may seem bigger than Kenmore and perhaps even too complex to wrap our heads around. Examples include affordable housing, climate change, pedestrian and bicycle safety, racial and social justice, and human services. Yet, we do not shrink from these challenges. Thanks to our tax-paying residents and businesses, we have resources to do our part to make this small corner of the world a better place. And who knows, perhaps we're helping to make the world a better place too. We know that we are. We're more than excited about what's planned in this budget, and we're grateful for the resources provided by our residents and businesses that make this budget and everything in it possible. We also want to reiterate our gratitude for the residents who volunteered to serve on the Financial Sustainability Task Force earlier this year. I think one of them's here in the front row. If we follow their recommendations, our city will be financially sustainable with strong fund balances for years to come. Gratitude is also due to my incredible team of coworkers who produced this budget. It has been an all hands on deck effort, but I want to thank in particular our Finance and Administration Director, Melinda Morel, and her team, including Carla Schnee, Julie Yinger, and Brenda Chamness. Biennial budget is a large document with a lot of complexity and interconnected pieces, and they did a great job bringing it all together. Michelle Kang and Lauren Homiak offered to help with design, formatting, and editing. They were quintessential and have brought the look and feel of the budget up to the next level. And I think you might notice that it's a pretty good looking budget. Last but not least, the department directors and their teams worked hard to produce the numbers and the content for their department budgets. It truly takes a team. We are grateful and inspired by the City Council's vision for the city. Kenmore is truly on an upward trajectory of becoming. And the resources provided in this budget, combined with the collective efforts of the City Council, our hardworking city employees, our co-creators, businesses, and the community as a whole, we can achieve what this budget sets out to do, which is to make our service vision a reality. Propelling Kenmore upward, we create a thriving community where all people love where they live and do business, play, work, and learn. So that's it, Your Honor. In the coming weeks, we'll have City Council study sessions to go into the budget in more detail.
All right, I think we all have a lot of reading to do over the next week. 234 pages if I was looking at this correctly.
I just want to let you know that thank you to some amazing hard work by Michelle. This is all available online with a clickable format. So if you're at the table of contents and you want to go directly to something, you just click the table of contents. Yeah, it's going to be amazing when it's all fully final. Also, just a quick note, you will find there are some inserts where we say it's a page holder. So like the CIP, which hasn't been adopted yet, that will get inserted for the final, but it's not in there right now. So there's some of those in there. Thanks.
And also, don't feel like you have to read the entire budget between now and next Monday. what you can do is you can look at next Monday's agenda and you can see the divisions that we'll be talking about, and then you can read up on those.
All right. And I would also just remind folks that if questions come up as you're going through the budget, please submit those to staff if you can prior to the council meeting, because there's a lot going on and this is the biggest lift we have of the year. So
Thank you, Your Honor. Really appreciate that. Questions ahead of time are welcome. So thank you.
all right, thank you very much. All right, next and last item on the business agenda, selecting planning commission applicants for interviews presented by Community Development Director Debbie Bent.
Wasn't planning on saying anything this evening. So we have some vacancies on the planning commission. It's a 7-member commission and the council appoints that 7-member commission. We have 3 vacancies that are coming up at the end of this year. You had 15 community members submit applications. And this evening, we're asking for council to decide which of the 15, some or all of them, to interview at your October 21st meeting. And at your October 21st meeting, it would be to interview candidates and then following the interviews to discuss and then pass a motion to appoint whichever 3 members to the 3-year term starting in 2025. And then if there are any additional members, to put those in a pool in case there are unexpected vacancies. So I will turn it over to the mayor. Thank you.
All right, so to be clear, I just a quick question for you. So out of the 3 openings or 3 vacancies, 1 is being reapplied for by the current member and the other 2 are.
Yes, we have two commissioners who did not submit applications. We have one commissioner, Michael Vanderland, who is a current member of the commission, who submitted an application. And so we started this process a few recruitments in the past to make it fair that if you are a current member, you also need to reapply if you're interested.
Councilor Shubnik, do you have a question?
Oh, so Council, Planning Commissioner Vanderland is reapplying. Who are the 2 that are not? I think it might be in the agenda bill, but just
It
reiterate it.
was Commissioner Wyckoff and Commissioner Cardry.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a job in front of us right now, which is to select folks to be interviewed on the 21st. We usually, I'm hoping, I'm assuming everybody has read through the applications and has some folks that has an idea of who they'd like to interview. We're gonna have an hour to do the interview, is that correct?
But it's nodding,
Okay.
yes.
So we're gonna have about an hour to do interviews. Last time we did things in 10 minutes apiece, and that was very fast. So I'm hoping we could get down to less than 6 or so. What I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna go through the names, and I'm just gonna ask for, Deputy Mayor.
I think that we shouldn't limit ourselves to solely an hour for the interviews in the event that we do have more than 6. Looking at the slate that we received, this is probably the most qualified group of planning commissioners I've seen come through in my time here. So I just wanted to just bring it up. And I think it's really important that we, have the opportunity to ensure that we have a full slate. Thank you.
So I, with the body's acceptance, I am going to go down the list in the order that you have them, starting with Mr. Vanderland and going down from there. I'm going to ask for thumbs up for folks. If you would like to interview them, I will then add everything up and we will see where things land and we can then decide, I guess, how many folks we want to interview in total. Sorry, it's kind of a messy process and it's not the cleanest process, but it's the process that we have. Any questions before we start? Councilmember Shubnik?
How many votes do we get?
That's a really good question. I hadn't thought of that.
I was just asking, how many votes do we get?
That is, I would take suggestions on that front. I wasn't going to come in and tell everybody, hey, keep it to 5 votes or so, but I don't know. So what are folks comfortable with?
I kind of feel like those that get the highest votes, I think we should just vote through and see what the result looks like. That's, and then if it's too absurd, then go through and have a limited vote to streamline. But
Now let's just take a quick first pass here. Vote for whoever you're interested in. We're not going to limit number of votes right here. Let's just start off really quickly. Michael Vanderlyn. Yes, thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 6. Okay. Becca Bailey. 1, 2, 3. 3. Over Marshall. Awesome. I'm also just going to say names of the thumbs for the public, but also just in case I don't catch your thumb, you can catch me. Brennan Bjorkman. I see 1. Marlo Castillo. 1, 2. Okay. Eric Dockery. Okay, I see 1 on that. Josu Flores. I'm hoping I didn't mangle that too much. 1, 2. Okay. Shrubnik and Lutzis. Sasha Funcannon. Okay. That's Marshall. Chris Gustafson. Okay, I see 1, 2. O'Kane and Lutzis. Vincent Keene. 2, 3, 4. So that's me, Sasson, Shrubnik, and Culver. Edward LaSalle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's every. Yes, that's everybody except Councilor Marshall. Kara Macias. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's Marshall, Sasson, Lutzis, and O'Kane. Don Oates. I'm seeing 2 from Lutzis and O'Kane. Judy O'Brien. 1, 2, 3, Shrubnik, O'Kane, and Lutzis. Marcus Rochelle. Okay, I see 1 from Lutzis. And Matthew Serafino. 1 from Sasson, 1 from me. All right. So let me just do some quick math really quickly. All right, we have, make sure I'm looking at this correctly. We have 2, we got 6 votes. Michael Vanderlyn, Edward LaSalle. Got 2 with 4 votes, Vincent Keene, Kara Macias. That brings us to 4. And then we have 1, 2 folks that had 3 votes. Becca Bailey. Got 2, sorry, I think I miscounted there. 2 with 3 votes, Becca Bailey and Judy O'Brien. So if that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that is 6. Everybody other than that only had one or two thumbs. Are we okay moving forward with those six? And I can read it again for the clerk. We all good with that? All right. So the six that we'll be interviewing would be Michael Vanderlyn, Becca Bailey, Vincent Keene, Edward LaSalle, Kara Macias, and Judy O'Brien. Deputy Mayor?
Just in my notes, and I know that we've made the vote. I thought that Judy O'Brien, with her experience on the Medina Planning Commission and her comments, really looked worthy of including and may expand some of the breadth of our candidates. So I just thought I'd bring that up. I think this panel, there are more that I would speak to, but that was one that stood out, and I was surprised didn't make 3 votes.
Sorry, who was that again?
I believe it was Judy O'Brien. She was
Judy O'Brien is on the list. She got 3.
made it. She got 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, just for clarity, Michael Vanderlyn, Becca Bailey, Vincent Keene, Edward LaSalle, Kara Macias, and Judy O'Brien are the 6 that we'll be interviewing on the 21st. All right. Councilmember Lutsis.
I just briefly want to say that we had an outstanding pool of candidates who applied, very, very qualified people, and I wish, I wish we had more that we could interview, more people that we could hear from, but I still want a lot of these people who have applied to stay involved, stay active, follow along, be involved. But just thank you for taking the time, and there are a lot of qualified candidates in this pool.
Thank you. Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, I just had a question for staff. Did we reach out to our DEI task force to see whether any of them might be interested in applying? I know it's past the application date at this point. I was just wondering about the process.
No, I mean, we did this in the regular channels on the website in the top 4, so and other outreach, so the task force members would have been aware there was an application.
I guess for future, I would love us to be doing kind of engagement with our temporary task forces around moving into planning commission, or at least kind of proactively letting them know about the, kind of assertively letting them know about the opportunity to provide kind of a pathway. Yeah, thanks.
That is a good point. All right. Well, thank you very much. Staff reports.
Just really excited about the EV charging workshop we're going to have on the 22nd later this month. That's all I have.
Okay. Councilmember reports and comments. Councilmember Culver.
Thank you, Mayor. Because I am a glutton for punishment, once again, I am asking council to bring the rental registration program back for discussion and potential adoption. It's a small fee to administer periodic inspection and provide some basic insights into our rental market. Approximately 15 cities have a rental registration program in place, including Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane, Olympia, Tacoma, Bellingham, Burien, Kent, Tukwila, and Renton. Staff has already put the research time into this policy back in 2022. I'm not asking for a new goose chase on research. I would simply like to bring it back for consideration and potential adoption. We have another built-in benefit. The business registration program is up and running, which the rental registration could certainly piggyback on. Our DEIA policy calls for evidence-based decision-making, and we need more of this. We can't expect to solve a problem without measurable insight into it. Both the small landlords and tenants have advocated for the rental registration program. We know it can sometimes be challenging to find community consensus. So when that consensus presents itself on a silver platter, I think we should take the win, and I hope we would take the win. Accordingly, I would move to bring this back for discussion, and I would kindly ask for a second.
And unfortunately, and I see Don's hand is raised, but unfortunately, this is also a special meeting. Councilmember, our regular meetings are second, third, and fourth Mondays.
Man, we're gonna have a 5th time,
So,
jeez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, sorry. Don, do you have anything else to add?
No, that was it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry about that. Councilmember, do you have anything else?
My pitch is going to be so good on number 5. All right, thing number 2, development agreements. We had a lot of good thought-provoking conversation on this a couple weeks back on development agreements. I want to thank my colleagues for a lively discussion and supportive votes on that. I understand it's coming back sometime in early 2025. I am bringing development agreements up again tonight to take a step back actually and address a pattern or at least a perception. I cited 3 instances of development agreements in recent projects, and apparently that was an undercount. There's at least one other project where we are trying to avoid development agreements, and there certainly could be others in the works. Now, if the developer wants to avoid the development agreement process of their own volition, okay, great, that was always allowed. But particularly in light of some of the past year's events, I get it. My concern is it feels like we are actively steering potential partners away from utilizing the development agreement process entirely. And if that is the case, I am uncomfortable with that becoming the new standard operating procedure, particularly without council specifically directing that change. Why? The intent is to provide flexibility to achieve public benefits. Both our city code and the RCW specifically cite affordable housing as one potential benefit, our council's top priority. In absence of that flexibility, several projects have already been scaled back. Of course, our code exists for a reason, but our housing affordability crisis also exists for a reason, and development processes exist for a reason too. So to recap, it seems like we are steering developers away from development agreements. I'd happily be wrong on that, and if so, I'd be curious to reconcile counterexamples. Either way, I think this warrants proper discussion from the deliberative body, and I will kindly ask for a second next week. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Culver. Councilmember Marshall.
Worth sharing, but I was dismayed to read yesterday in the Seattle Times that the official height of Mount Rainier has been lowered because of decrease in glacial pack or ice and snow pack. It is lowered, and that does dismay me. But I think it underscores, if at times I've had slight doubts even about, okay, can we really make that much of a difference with our environmental program in Kenmore? Does it really make that much of a difference to try and bring back salmon, to try and safeguard trees? And man, I just think with information like that, we can be proud that we're trying to do something, we're trying to do our part.
Councilmember Sassen.
You two are hard act to follow this evening, I just want to say. I received some community input today of gratitude, so I wanted to pass that on to our city managers, just saying that the community up Juanita Way is delighted with the landscaper who's now taking care of that. They're loving where they live, so I wanted to pass that along. And I don't have anything else this evening.
Councilmember Shubnik.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. I too feel dismayed, but that's mitigated by feeling like we're trying, and that's a hopeful feeling. I wanted to comment on the budget. Every time I see this, every 2 years, it is more brilliant each time. And I'm never sure how that's possible, but it is. So I just want to thank staff for the thoughtfulness, the clarity, the detail, and the enthusiasm for what could be a rather dry topic. And I think it's brilliant. We have amazing staff that make sometimes the driest topics brilliant. And I'm consistently impressed by that. On that topic, I know our city manager and deputy city manager have alluded to what would we look like if we were a more mature city. In terms of staffing patterns. And the 2 examples are in here are Bothell, which is twice our size, and Kirkland, which is closer to 4 times our size. And I'm just wondering when we get to the discussions over the next several weeks, whether we might bring up an example that's a mature city that is similar size, and what that might look like it isn't proposed for this biennium, but what might that look like going forward?
Counselor Lucis?
Yes, two things. Quickly want to thank staff. I mean, this is a lot of work right here. And I just know that that has taken up so much bandwidth of our staff recently, and it will continue to do so until it's all passed at the end of the year. So I just want to thank the finance team in particular for all the hard work, all those who have supported them, and including, our deputy city clerk and our tourism and communications manager and everyone else who's had a hand in this, all the staff putting this together. It's a lot of work. And, here I guess is the fun part where we look over it and we talk through it and everything, but it's important to what we do. And, there's a lot of value to what has been done. And so I want to recognize that and all the effort and time that's been spent on this, for the last little sprint. Additionally, really quickly, last week, the Seashore Transportation Forum met last Friday, where we received updates from the Puget Sound Regional Council and began discussion on the 2025 legislative agenda for this committee. So if there's any sort of interests or projects we want to include on that, please let me know and I'll try and relay that. Although I also understand that the East Side Transportation Partnership might be a more fitting place to include that.
Deputy Mayor?
Not much to add. I will be attending the RIA 8 Legislative Subcommittee meeting tomorrow, so hopefully I'll have something to bring back next week. And I genuinely want to thank staff for their outstanding work on the budget, echoing our fellow council members here. And really, truly outstanding pool of applicants today. I'm surprised that we narrowed it down to 6. I just didn't see it happening, but really outstanding pool. It was great to see. Thank you.
I want to reiterate what everybody has already said, but I also, a couple of things on the budget. One is just something that I want to flag for staff to make sure that we have this and when we get to the proper point in our consideration. But the city manager mentioned cost savings or possible cost savings with increasing some of the FTEs and, the possibility of that saving us on consulting. I'd like to see more information on what that looks like when we get there. And the other one is just, a reminder to my colleagues and, to everybody here, the budget can be a very dry document and it can be a very, a tedious process to go through. But an important thing that I try to keep in mind is that budgets are moral documents, and how we decide to spend, our residents' money are showing how we prioritize our priorities. And I hope that folks will keep that in mind as we're working through this, because not everything is black and white, and it's a big decision. It's a big vote, and I'm excited to go through all of this, and I love the formatting. It's beautiful. Although no Hank Aaron on the cover, I gotta say. Anyway, all right, folks, with nothing more to come before us, we are adjourned.